Welcome back to another chapter of the Book Eaters podcast. Today we have Michelle, April, and our friend Tracy is going to be keeping us company.
They can't see you anyway.
Hi. And this chapter is going to be titled, Were They High? And we are going to be diving into the vast world of speculative fiction. Now, Michelle and I have already kind of hashed it out, but I think we agree that all of the things that we are talking about tonight falls under speculative fiction. It's not all-encompassing.
I feel like it's difficult for us to say that we agree since you have the outline and I have no idea what we're going to be talking about.
I sent you the outline.
I mean, you did send me an outline, but I'm looking at your outline and my outline are not the same.
No, that's because this has my notes.
Right.
But the outline is the same. It's just
okay.
Don't be looking at my notes.
I'm just saying.
Okay, you could have brought notes.
I'm just saying that you saying that we agree is not necessarily true. We'll have to see how that plays out.
All right.
I may agree or I may not.
I don't want us to start out this way.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I want us to be friends.
We are friends.
We're frenemies when it
We're
comes
not
to books.
frenemies.
When it comes to books, we are.
No.
Well, so I got the idea for this because many, many years ago, probably 20 to 30 years ago, when I was up late watching, like the amateur comedy. I don't remember the guy's name, and I did try to Google it in an attempt to give him a shout out, but I could not find it. He was talking about how a lot of the plots of movies that they had to be getting stoned when they came up with the idea. And he was like, Edward Scissorhands. Yeah, like, so there's this guy, and he's got scissors for heads. Anyways. That was my impression of smoking a joint, too.
That was a pretty good sound.
He did it much better. But so anyways, at the time, I thought that was hilarious, and it really has stuck with me. And I know that I absolutely love bizarre plots, and it's probably my favorite books all fall under speculative fiction. So
I feel like that's true for me as well.
Fantasy absolutely falls into, well, that's what we were saying, like everything that you read falls under speculative fiction.
Well, I mean, not everything that I read, but like the majority of things I read. Like I just read a nonfiction book. I do occasionally read nonfiction. I do occasionally read self-help books. I occasionally read books about how to excel at Excel.
Right, but you don't like straight fiction, mainstream fiction.
Generally speaking, the mainstream fiction feels a little pseudo-intellectual to me oftentimes, and I don't enjoy that. Like, it feels like it's trying to get me to think about things. Like, I want them to tell me a story, right? And it feels like they're not telling me a story. It feels like they're trying to teach me something, or they're trying to show off what they know, and that's not really what I'm about. Like, I want to be entertained. Entertain me! I
don't mind that type of fiction. In fact, I kind of like it. I don't like the opposite, when it's really dumbed down fiction, and I'm just going to say it, like Jodi Picoult. There's also another one, and she writes, and I'm sorry to my sister because she loves this series, but she writes this whole series of books where they all take, and it's a clever idea. It's a cute idea. It's just not, We've
talked about this before on the podcast.
It's all the street name, like 24 Mockingbird Lane, and it's all cutesy street names and everything. And it's just schmaltz. It's like Thomas Kincaid as a writer, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not for me. But so anyways, now that we've kind of talked about what the podcast is about, we have a drink to go with it, of course. I struggled with this. I had a tough work week. I texted Michelle and was like, I'm drawing a blank. The only thing I could come up with is we have to use rum and maybe Miller High Life.
And I was immediately offended by that.
That's what my dad, no, my dad drank MGD. He always drank.
Miller Genuine Draft.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of a step below Miller High Life.
Well, that's how I grew up, Michelle.
Dude, my dad
Baby, bring me a cold one. That's what
my dad drank pretty disgusting beer as well. Like, I can't even remember, like, whatever the cheapest thing was, that's what he drank. So I'm with you there, but gross.
Okay. So we didn't do that.
Thank goodness.
And so I started thinking about getting high, and of course I thought of the Big Lewbowski. And getting high is very prominent in that film, and it's also an example, I think, of speculative writing. It is a pretty bizarre plot. And the beverage of choice in that film is White Russians. Because of our rum theme this season, this is The Dude Abides is what I'm calling it. And it is basically a White Russian, but it is rum instead of vodka. It has the coffee liqueur in it. And just because we like to do it upright, instead of cream, it is rum shada. So, cheers.
Cheers. It's good.
Oh, yep. There's alcohol in that.
It definitely has but it has like that sweet alcohol burn.
Yes.
It's not like a whiskey burn. It's more like, that sweet sort of feels like it's cleaning out all the gook in your throat and opening your heart up.
Oh, that's very nice. All right, so let's just start out with books that come to mind when you think this is a crazy plot. How did someone even ever come up with it?
A crazy plot.
And the first one, when I was thinking about Michelle and what she may say, the first one that came to mind was the Dragon Porn book.
No, I don't think that that's a crazy plot at all. I think that's a pretty standard book plot that I would read, right? So it's a quest, and on the quest you meet some fun characters, and those fun characters do fun things.
But they're dragons.
The dragons are often in books I read, because I like to read speculative fiction, which includes
fantasy
dragon books. Yes. So, yeah. I mean, I don't think that they were high. I mean, I would... T.J. Klune sometimes goes a little off on a deep end, but I don't think that he is high when he writes. Although they do say that you should write drunk and edit sober, right? That's what they say.
Do they? I was going to ask that. I was going to ask if you, and you're a writer.
I guess, yeah.
Do you find that inebriants lubricate the writing process? Because I think I would not be able to write if I was super drunk.
I'm not super...
Sing, sure.
Not super drunk, but I think writing drinking does the thing where it gets rid of your inhibitions. And so a lot of times if you're having trouble and you're holding yourself back because you don't think it's good enough, or you don't like the plot, or you don't know where it's going, or you think that's stupid, if you're drunk, you write it on the page, and you can always edit something that's on the page. If it's a blank page, you can't edit it, so it's almost better to have nonsense than to have nothing at all.
I could kind of see that with alcohol, but with weed?
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't do weed. It's not illegal in this state.
Well, I mean, I don't do it now, but in my time I did. And there's no way I could piece together like sentences and plot points. And I mean, I can remember one time I was at a friend's house, and this was before cell phones, and the phone rang, and she told me to answer it, and we had some of the pot, and I was trying to take a message for her dad, and he's not here right now. Can I take a message? Remember when we used to do that? We don't really do that anymore, do we?
Yeah. And so answer the phone for other people,
right? And so I had, they had a little notepad next to the phone, and he kept trying to tell me that his name was John, and I'd be like, okay, one more time, what was your name? and then I'd get the J, and I'd be like, I'm so sorry. One more time, what was your name? And I finally got it out, but he had to know. He had to know what we were doing.
I mean, you can tell when someone's high, I think. It depends, like, some people get, like, a singular focus, right? Like, artists that paint or any kind of thing probably get a singular focus. I know there's some other drugs which might lead to experiences, but I can't imagine somebody writing on acid either, or shrooms. Can you imagine? I mean, I've never done those things, but I can't imagine someone writing something on that. Like, feels like painting would be easier because
right.
It can be textile, like you can touch the paint with it, or you're physically doing stuff and it doesn't have to. But writing, I feel like requires like a syntax.
I don't know. The next time I do LSD, I'll try to write something and I'll let you know how it
Write
goes.
me an email from your Hotmail account.
I will never give up that Hotmail address. All right, so I just want to tell y'all about my favorite book. And I would go so far as to say it is in my top 5 books ever.
Okay.
It is, and you've probably heard me talk about it, but it is The Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break.
I have.
and by Stephen Sherrill. And it is just such an amazing book. And maybe the first time that I was just completely blown away by something that seemed so out there, but the writing was just so fantastic. And so the plot is basically the Minotaur from mythology
Right.
was not killed by Theseus in the Colosseum or wherever, and has survived through the millennia and slowly has been more humanized after thousands and thousands of years, right? And now he lives in a trailer park. I want to say it was like maybe South Carolina. He works as a line cook because that's sort of the job that he has done,
Right.
because you can always get a job as a cook. And he's super awkward because he's so much bigger. He still has the body of a man and the bull head. And so he's like always getting his horns, like poke things that he doesn't mean to. And,
Sure. As you do.
he doesn't have, I wouldn't say it's a speech impediment, but it is harder for him to talk because of his snout and everything. So he's lonely and he's sad, and he both yearns for companionship and scorns it. And I have a couple of sections I'd like to read.
Oh.
Okay, because
All
it's
right.
just so beautiful. Okay.
Okay.
The Minotaur lacks confidence in his penmanship. Over time, the Minotaur has learned to read, has even been able to make the slow, laborious transition from one language to another as cultures die off and fade away as he moves from place to place. But the Minotaur has never been able to rise above rudimentary skills. Most books seem ridiculously small, and the physical act of finding a comfortable sightline over his massive snout frustrates him. Nevertheless, the Minotaur is haunted by the idea that books and reading might make those vast stretches of time that loom before him more bearable.
God, if only he had audiobooks.
Ooh, this was written like
audiobooks
20.
would have totally saved that Minotaur's bacon.
Oh, he's still alive somewhere. Maybe still in South Carolina. He goes by M, just M. And
Well, I'm sure that M has discovered audiobooks and podcasts.
well, I just recently found out that there is a sequel.
Oh.
I'm saving it. Also found out that Neil Gaiman has rescued this book from obscurity because it's not that well known, and has produced an audiobook version. But I can't get it because I don't have Audible.
That is actually how I read it, because Neil Gaiman had a series on Audible of Neil Gaiman Presents.
Oh, nice.
And that is the reason I read the book, because Neil Gaiman recommended it.
I didn't know that you'd read it.
How was the audiobook?
And it was great.
What'd you think of the book?
I enjoyed the book. I did.
It was so beautiful.
Yeah. See, I enjoyed it for different reasons, because while it was beautiful, I really enjoyed the concept of a timeless creature trying to make it in today's world, and just his struggles.
Yeah, and he does. And he wants a partner. I'm just going to read one more. I couldn't choose between the two. We can edit them out later if we need to.
Sure.
But I think you'll really appreciate this. Into the Minotaur's life there come occasional moments of clarity. Moments unpredictable and painfully brief that arrive at times as a thunderclap and at times as sweetly as a yawn. Moments when everything seems understandable, when the whole of his past makes sense to him, his present seems within his control, and his future pops and sizzles with a wild, dangerous hope. These moments are rare, and their aftermath lies somewhere between excitement and sheer terror. Okay, last one.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
I think this one is my favorite.
All right.
The architecture of the Minotaur's heart is ancient. Rough-hewn and many-chambered, his heart is a plodding, laborious thing, built for churning through the millennia. But the blood it pumps, the blood it has pumped for 5,000 years, the blood it will pump for the rest of his life, is nearly human blood. It carries with it, through its monster's veins, the weighty, necessary, terrible stuff of human existence. Fear, wonder, hope, wickedness, love. But in the Minotaur's world, it is far easier to kill and devour 7 virgins year after year, the rattling bones rising at his feet like a sea of cracked ice, than to accept tenderness and return it.
Wait, he has to kill people?
In his old days, back when he was...
I mean, it sounds like he's still doing it year after year.
No, he's saying that life was easier than to deal with the frailty of human emotion and humanity in general, the need and the fear. I mean, it's a powerful book, and I loved it, and I can't wait to read the sequel.
So you thought that the author was high when he came up with the idea?
I mean, it's a minotaur.
Yeah.
Working as a short order cook.
Sure.
And I mean, because it doesn't really point out the fact that he's the minotaur. There's hints to the fact that he has horns.
Right.
And certainly there's discrimination, but I mean, the fact that he's just working in a kitchen and everybody's like, yeah, sure, I mean, how does he apply for jobs? Yeah. What's on his resume? It's also mundane.
Mm-hmm. So you know what? This was a concept, and I don't want to get too far off, but this idea that like things happen and then people just accept them and move on, right? Like in shows and in movies and in books, right? It was always kind of odd to me, like if that happened in real life, would we just be able to move on from it? But I think the answer is yes, we do. We do immediately go, well, that was weird, and we freak out about it for a few minutes, and then eventually we just either ignore it altogether, we rationalize it, or we just sort of move on, and then it continues to exist. And that's probably what happens with like a minotaur or some weird creature, right? You just sort of go, well, that guy's just got some weird stuff going on. Maybe he got plastic surgery to do it. You sort of rationalize it in your brain and then move forward. I think we do that.
His name is the Minotaur.
Well, obviously, if I was a person that got plastic surgery to look like a Minotaur, I would change my goddamn name to the Minotaur.
I mean, that's some commitment. Yeah, once you're in.
Do you know what I'm saying?
If you're in for a penny, in for a pound.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, I think people would work it out somehow. You could come up with a story that people would buy, and maybe they'd have trouble with it at first, but eventually you move on. Go, all right, that's a thing.
Yep. So that's obviously my favorite one. I have a runner-up called The Giant's House, and I'm hesitant to describe it because it sounds bad. Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about lightning rods on the show before.
Oh, we got a lightning rod.
I mean, that's a pretty bizarre plot.
That's definitely where a person probably was high. When they thought of the idea, probably what happens is people get high, think of ideas, they write the ideas down, and then later when they're sober, they actually
that makes
write
sense.
books. Because it's easy to, like, think of weird shit when you're drunk.
Right.
Or when you're high, I suppose. Or whatever. But then later, you're like, oh, that's actually not a bad idea. And then you could sort of formulate it realistically. Although I guess there are some authors that write all the time when they're high.
So lightning rods is when basically this guy gets an idea for a business in which he will place women and no one will know that they are the lightning rods. They're just doing their normal secretarial work. And if someone in the office needs sexual gratification, there's like a little buzzer or something on the desk, and then the lightning rod knows to go into the bathroom. There's like a partition so they can't tell who the woman is. They have sex with her, and that keeps them from sexually harassing other women in the office because their needs are being met.
Oh my God.
And
Tracy's never heard of this book before.
But I do want to point out that it was written by a woman,
right.
Okay? And I mean, it's just so weird. And but I wouldn't say that's one of my favorite books. I just thought it was a really crazy premise, and I read the whole thing. I mean, I was pretty interested to know what was going to happen. But there's another one, and this is kind of an older book too, called The Giant's Shoes, or is it The Giant's House?
I don't know.
It's The Giant's House. Elizabeth McCracken. I say shoes because on
Release the Kraken.
The cover has his shoes on it. But anyways, it's the story of a young librarian, mid-20s-ish, probably on the spectrum in some way, although the book never says that, but she's the narrator. And not super likable, kind of annoying, which may make a great episode, books with unlikable characters. But anyway, so...
And that's every book.
Well, like when the protagonist...
Oh, the main protagonist is not...
Right. And sometimes intentionally, I think.
I mean, usually, I think, if you don't like them. Well, I guess not always.
Yeah, I think sometimes writers think they're writing I hate to bring it up again, but Three Mages and a Margarita. I mean, I'm sure the writer thought he was making her She was making her a real pistol.
I mean, I do know people who love that character.
A lot of people do, but that's what I'm saying. She didn't intentionally make her unlikable, but I found her unlikable. In any case, the librarian is.
You read the one book. If you kept reading the series, eventually you'd want her.
There's too many books out there waiting to be read to waste time on one that you don't like. Right? Am I right?
I mean, I just feel like if you're going to bring it up every episode, then maybe you should take some time to invest in it. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think I bring it up every episode. Every time I need a reference for a bad book, though, I do. Apologies to the Anything But Scary Clowns book club because they all loved it. I know they did. It's just not for me. It's not my cup of tea.
Okay.
All right, so back to the Giant's house. So that's her. And then in the same town, it's like in the 50s, I think, is an 11-year-old boy who has gigantism. And I think, like he's already 6 foot something at 11. Oh. And he's just going to keep growing. And, he goes to the library. They start out with this very sweet friendship, but they do develop into a romantic relationship. Oh. Not at the age of 11. It's over years.
That's good because that's creepy.
But it is. He's still.
With the librarian?
With the librarian.
Who's older than him when he's 11?
Yes, she's like 20. She's like 20. 25.
She meets him when he's 11.
Yes.
See, I have problems with that. That's weird.
But no, I mean, at first he's just a kid that comes in, and she's the librarian.
I feel like if you meet someone when they're a child.
I know. I told you it was going to sound bad.
Yeah, because that's called grooming.
No, I mean, she can't groom him. She's not groomed herself. She's almost a child herself. She's very emotionally young. And so they just have a friendship for a long time. But then, and he's like the opposite. He's very mature for his age because he knows that he's not going to live like past the age of 18. I know it sounds terrible.
He's 16 and she's in her 20s. Still wrong.
Still wrong.
I know you can't say it out loud and it not seem wrong. But if you read the book,
it's wrong. You
would see that it's not creepy. It's only creepy when you try to describe it.
I feel like this is one of those things where sometimes it takes saying it out loud to realize that it's creepy. But it's still creepy regard.
It's the two souls. I mean, you just have to read the book.
Okay, so just what if the sexes were reversed? And what if it was a 20-something-year-old man?
Okay, I'm going to say this. If I were a young girl and was entering into adolescence, knew that I would not survive adolescence, right?
Right.
I would want to enter into a sexual relationship with someone.
Yeah, but you would want that person to be the same age as you.
Not at 11.
No, I don't think I would. No, I just have said like 4 times. He wasn't 11 at the time.
Saying, like when you meet somebody and they're 11 years old, then immediately they should no longer be sexual interest you at all for the rest of their lives.
That just made me think of what is this from?
What is what from?
But no, there used to be something on the radio, and it would be like, "My name is Jeffrey, and I'm 11 years old." I don't know what that's from though. If we have listeners that grew up in the Atlanta area in the 80s, I think that they would remember that. But he would come on the radio, he'd be like, "My name is Jeffrey, and I'm 11 years old," and then it would kick into the song. Nobody? Okay. All right. Anyways. So those are some books.
So clearly that person was high when they wrote the book.
No, I don't think that they were high. I just think it was a really bizarre... I mean, the title of the podcast is... I mean, we're not going to stick to it. The idea... the idea is just far out plots that you just are like, how did they think of it? Not necessarily that they were stoned. Okay, so give us one, Michelle.
Oh my gosh, I can't think of anything. But I'm still thinking about weird stuff now because of you put these things in my head.
Well, I mean, think of Margaret Atwood, Tom Robbins. I feel like most of their books are pretty out there and bizarre.
Yeah, Tom Robbins.
What's your favorite Tom Robbins book? I mean, we could do a whole podcast.
Still Lives with Woodpecker. But I'm trying to think of like something that's crazy that I thought, oh, that's really out there. But at the end of the day, like it's all sort of in someone's imagination.
But sometimes people's imaginations are just so crazy. You're like, how would they ever think of that? I do think we should have an episode about Tom Robbins.
Okay.
We'll eat tomato sandwiches.
That sounds fantastic.
Okay. Tracy, you got one you want to talk about? Let's hear it.
I do have one.
Oh, what is it?
So I think that Piers Anthony had to be high when he wrote the Xanth series.
Okay.
I'm not familiar. Tell me about it.
So that is a fantasy series. It's based in a fantasy land of Xanth, Xanth, that happens to look like Florida.
Oh.
And so physically it has a lot of the same, and it's full of creatures, and either you can do magic or you are magic. Like magical creatures like a centaur can't do magic because they are magic. So it's got all these rules, and it's full of puns. Like there's a boot rear tree where you can get, if you're too close to it, it boots you in the rear, like root beer. It's and it's just very fanciful like that. And there's, you know, there's a lot of magic and stuff, but you can see he definitely took, you know, what, instead of Lake Okeechobee, it's Lake Ogerchobee, you know, so it's, he just kind of messed with the real world a little bit, but he was definitely under the influence of something when he wrote some of that. The series is called the Xanth series. I think the first book is A Spell for Chameleon. I believe is the first book in the series.
Well, so I had written down, because that sort of sounds a little bit like some of the subgenres of speculative fiction.
I'm just sorry. I'm trying to tell you that speculative fiction is a wide umbrella.
Well, it is, because
that was my whole argument. You're like,
it's
apparently all these things are speculative fiction, like it's some small subsection, but it's not. It's like a wide umbrella. That's all that I was saying.
That's what the point was. Is that's what I was saying. No, we were saying the same thing, but then you said everything is speculative fiction. Tracy.
There was a fantastic argument before we started recording.
Almost everything is speculative fiction.
That you read.
Yeah, almost everything that I read is speculative fiction.
Well, but I'm just saying.
I don't read fiction unless you make me, like the Goldfinch.
Well, you know what? So some of this genres, obviously fantasy, science fiction. If you're thinking of that, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
some of that stuff is full on crazy. I mean,
that had to be stoned.
Like I don't know if they have to be stoned, but it's definitely nonsensical, and that was sort of the point of a lot of it, right? Like it's just so long, you know, the fish.
Yeah.
And
thanks for all the fish. Yeah.
You know, all of that stuff. It's pretty.
Douglas Adams had to be high.
I mean, he was definitely out there, and I don't mean in space.
All right. Probably one of my favorite genres of recent years is magical realism. Absolutely love that. That's where it is opposite from fantasy, because I feel like fantasy is absolutely 100% making up a new world. And magical realism is in our world, but it treats magic like it's just, I learned a word when I was researching this. I feel like it's the best word.
Okay.
It means kind of everyday commonplace, and it's quotidian.
Quotidian?
Yeah. Quotidian. 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 I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I just love that there's a word for that. And the word is amazing, but it means mundane. And I don't know enough Q words personally.
I mean, it is a pretty good word.
Okay.
Yes. It sounds like titty. If we're quoting titties in the story. Quotidian. Sorry.
Okay, I've already got the first idea for our speculative fiction plot.
So this is 100% how these things happen. So now all of a sudden we're going to write a story
about
breasts.
Quote the titties nevermore.
That keep saying things that are awesome and people keep quoting them.
I've never even said
stories.
I don't say the T word.
You don't say titty?
I think it's tacky.
Like fart.
You know I won't say that word. I will say the T word before I say that word.
Okay.
All right. Now, okay. All right. Well.
Maybe they've all been edited.
But yes, The Murmur of Bees, Sophia Segovia. I loved that book. There was a tree in that book that if you ate, but that may be fact, I'm not sure, but if you ate the fruit from it, it would put you to sleep forever or something.
You mean the fruit was poisonous?
Was a poisonous tree?
Right. But it was so beautifully written that's how it was described.
I didn't like that book.
You didn't?
It was weird.
It was very weird.
Yeah.
And had some very unlikable characters. Also, Exit West. Did either of y'all read that?
No.
Oh, man, that was so good. It was Mohsen Hamid. And so it's basically like a refugee story. It's somewhere in the Middle East. And kind of a star-crossed lover vibe.
Right.
Their families don't want them to be together, but they fall in love anyway. And the backdrop is this war-torn city. And then, and that part starts out as just a love story, and it's a beautiful love story. But then they find out that there's these doors that can magically transport you to different parts of the world.
Cool.
And so they go through it one day. And Madeline and I used to read together a lot, and as she got older, she didn't read as much, and so I'm always like trying to give her books and be like, "You'll love this one." And she's like, gets like a third of the way in.
I do the same thing to Maria.
Yeah. Well, this one Madeline actually read the whole thing and loved. Yeah? Yep. So it was a really good one. And then there was also Kitchens of the Midwest, which seemed like a perfectly ordinary book, except that one of the characters just starts hearing voices. And it turns out later that she's pregnant, and she's hearing the voice of her fetus.
Oh.
But it's treated like completely normal. And she's not crazy or anything like that. She's just,
How does the baby know how to talk?
Well.
Has no words and shit.
It just does. I guess it's a super smart fetus.
I mean, that's pretty smart. So, this is nothing to do with what you were just talking about, but when you said exit, I was thinking about existentialism. And like no exit and Waiting for Godot and those sort of things. Those are definitely
speculative fiction.
Just crazy out there. Like you have to wonder about the mental health of these people that wrote these because they didn't make any sense. They were very like I remember The Sandbox. Have you read The Sandbox? I think it's Ionesco. I'm not sure. But basically, like there's like these weird moments where like these two people meet, and then one person's like, "Hi, I've never met you," and they're like, "I've never met you either. We've got something in common. Let's get married." And so then they do. Like, it's that kind of weird, sort of random thing that just keeps happening. Like, no exit, right? Or Waiting for Godot, where they're just, like, waiting for something that never happens. Or what was that play I just recently saw? The Bellhop? Not the Bellhop. What's the thing called that goes up and down?
The elevator?
No. Like, if you put food on it and it goes down.
The Dumbwaiter.
The Dumbwaiter. The Dumbwaiter is another play that I recently saw where it's just weird and out there, and it doesn't make any sense. And in the ending, you're just like, wait, what just happened? Where I think that possibly drugs were involved.
I think that is one of the subgenres that I was going to mention called experimental.
Well, existentialism. It's like existential theater.
You think both of those are?
I think those are all the examples I gave you are examples of existentialist theater from like the same sort of time period.
Okay, cool.
Same group of. But I guess you could say experimental. I mean, sure.
Well, no. I mean, obviously there's overlap with a lot of things. But experimental is more kind of like what we were talking about with unlikable characters where you intentionally break with tradition for what people expect from a book. Likable characters, a discernible plot, that sort of a thing. But also who is the...
plot. An ending that makes sense.
Well, like, what is it? The rainbow one? It's Rainbow, and it's just like if you tried to read it, it makes absolutely no sense. Rainbow? Or Ulysses,
Oh, James Joyce.
But
Finnegan's Wake.
Finnegan's Wake. Yes.
Don't even get me started. Like, isn't that written like in musical notes?
But then also, who's the beatnik guy that wrote On the Road?
Jack Kerouac?
Yeah, I never got... That seemed super indulgent to me, that whole stream of consciousness thing. Well, sure, I could just sit down and write.
Well, Virginia Woolf was stream of consciousness. Although she did kill a character off in like a line and made me very angry. I'm very angry with her.
I think Virginia Woolf is often heralded as one of the experimental. But also, it's not just like what they're writing, but like how they print it, where like the margins are super big and the text is just like in this little thing, or there'll be blank pages for some reason.
It's like poetry?
Yeah, or I think I just read a synopsis of one where the whole time you're reading, you're being chased by a shark through the pages. It's like a shark made out of text, and he like chases you as you're reading.
That's cool as shit. I want to read that.
They probably were high.
Yeah, it's that Grover book where there's a monster at the end.
That's what I was thinking too.
Right?
That's what it reminded me of.
There's a monster at the end.
Yeah.
Stop turning pages.
Stop turning. Maybe you do not understand. You see, there is a monster at the end of this book, and we do not want to get to the end of the book because there is a monster there.
Yeah. But you know what else I was thinking of? I finally thought of one. Metamorphosis, Kafka.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, that's crazy. Like, you turn into a cockroach for no reason? What?
I feel like you got a lot of self-hatred. That's what's coming out there. I mean, not you, but Kafka.
Like, they made me read that in high school.
Yeah, I've never understood the appeal for that book. But some other is alternate histories, right? Which I think the first thing that comes to mind, because they made the Amazon show, is The Man in the High Castle, Philip K. Dick. It's a great show. I didn't read the book.
I'm just not a fan of Hitler.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not treated well in this book.
I don't want to, yeah.
Well, probably the best one that I've read is River of Teeth by Sarah Gailey. And in this one, now this part's true. Apparently, at the turn of the century, the U.S. thought it would be a great idea to import hippopotami into the country to help keep the alligator population down.
Shit.
In Louisiana.
That's crazy dumb.
Right. So
it's bringing the piranhas as well around it.
So that didn't pan out. But in this book, River of Teeth, she has imagined a world where they did bring in the hippopotami. They thrived in the environment, became overpopulated, and are a hazard. And it's sort of a Western sort of a thing too. And it's an inclusive, diverse cast, which is great. Right. There's somebody who's non-binary, very LGBTQ friendly, but also just really a rollicking good time. It has all the vibes of this ragtag team of people that are going to come together for one last job, and they've got to. I mean, it's a great, and it's actually a series, but the first one is the River of Teeth. So there's these hippopotami, right? Mm-hmm. and like some of them are friendly. Like there's one, I can't remember the hippo's name, but she was adorable and she was just so funny. If I was a hippopotami, I'm not plural, so if I was a hippopotamus,
right?
If I got a hippopotamus for Christmas, right. I would want it to be. I think her name was Rosie. I think that was her name.
Rosie's a hippopotamus.
Yeah.
Hippopotamus are scary.
Not this one. She was
scary.
A total love bug.
They will kill you.
One I think a subgenre that I think we've all read a lot of is dystopian.
Yeah.
That has had a recent heyday.
Sure.
Yep.
Do y'all have a favorite dystopian novel?
Oh.
Hunger Games,
I never read Hunger Games because my nephew, God bless him, told me what happens in the book. And he said to me, "Aunt Shelley, you don't want to read that." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Here's why." And I was like, "You're 100% right." Yeah. Thank you for saving me from that shit show, because even though I hear it's an amazing book and well written and well loved, the fact that, I don't know if I want to do spoilers, right? The fact that the child that she tries to save dies anyway, fuck that shit. I would have been enraged. I can't even imagine how angry I would have been if I was invested in any of those characters and that happened.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that
I would have been enraged. I can't even. No.
I really enjoyed the Matt Adams series by Margaret Atwood, which, again, Handmaid's Tale everybody knows about because of the show, but the book was very good. I mean, that's kind of a bizarre idea that only certain people can get pregnant and only certain people can impregnate them, and that's pretty crazy. But with the the first of that series is Oryx and Crake, and dystopian. So it's not it's in a different time, and these childhood friends all grow up together. It's kind of a love triangle thing going on, and Crake is super smart. Snowman is the narrator. He's like one of the last surviving humans because his childhood friend Crake created a new race, basically, with blue butts of all things. And that's where the weed comes in.
Okay.
And they're just very passive, peaceful people, but they have taken over and they're all that's left, and they thinks the snowman is hilarious because he's like this big brown, he's like a human, and then it kind of flashes back to how you got to this point. And I mean, it was pretty interesting, and Nate listened to the audiobooks and he loved it too.
I just finished reading, oh my god, I wish I could remember the name of it. There's a show on HBO, it's about the traveling actors group that does Shakespeare. And like an end of the world happens where there's like a virus that wipes everybody out, and there's like a small percentage of people that live. God, I can't remember the name of this book. It's really good. It's really good, and you would love it because it's written on that same weird fictiony level that you like. But it was like, essentially what happens is all like half the world dies, and then we follow like this little girl that lives, and then they're like actors, and they have like a troupe, and they do Shakespeare, but they follow like a trail around, and then it's it's sort of like an end of the world scenario where they like live in Walmarts and McDonald's, because I don't know why they don't live in houses or whatever, but there's no lights, and because there's no lights, you can see the stars, and there's no, because civilization's like, it's 20 years later.
And that's called what?
Can't remember what the name of it is.
Damn.
And what's neat about it is like the way that you see how things, like trails follow through the years, even in this environment, this world where all that we know is done and gone. Station 11.
Station 11.
By Emily St. John Mandel.
I want to read that. She sold it.
It's really good. It's very
Let me
well
ask
written.
y'all, when we're talking about speculative fiction.
She's not going to let it go. She's going to say the word speculative fiction 150 times, even though this is not a podcast about speculative fiction. This is a podcast about Were They High? It's become speculative fiction in retaliation for my daring to disagree with her earlier in the evening. It's fine. It's fine.
So, but if we restrict speculative fiction to just the categories that we've talked about, what would you most be likely to write if you were to write one? Do you think you would write dystopian? Do you think you would write magical realism, fantasy, science fiction, alternate history? Like, what do you think would be the most fun?
Currently, I'm working on a horror novel, which falls into speculative fiction categories.
Does horror fall into?
It does, in fact, oftentimes. Not every time. But sometimes it does.
The one that you're writing?
Yes, the one that I am currently writing does fall into speculative fiction.
You were high when you came up with the idea.
I was not, actually.
I'm going to tell your boss.
I was not high. Although, no. But yeah, so I think horror, but also I think if I wasn't writing that novel, which I'm doing just sort of as a homage to my dad, right? If I wasn't doing that, then I would probably be fiction, like a fantasy, right?
Dragons?
Probably not dragons, but definitely there'd be some sort of magic involved,
What about you, Tracy?
It would definitely be fantasy, but more of a light fantasy, not the high fantasy where I'm creating its own world or anything, but fantasy and with some humor in it.
I really like the idea of doing an alternate history.
Yeah, I can see that.
I really like that. But lucky for you guys,
right?
It's time for the bookend.
Woo! The bookend.
And you no longer have to wonder what you might come up with to write about, because I, with my own two hands, I have created a.
Did you get high and come up with some ideas?
I have a speculative fiction plot generator that I have made. All right.
Damn.
All right. So.
Okay.
First, we'll start with Michelle. Oh no, I don't want to do the bookend yet.
Oh.
We'll come back to that, but now I've built the anticipation. I want to talk about, and then we're almost done. I did want to talk about keep feeling fascination. Anyways, I wanted to talk about
how easy is it to get able to sing?
Books. Yes, when we've had the drinks.
Even.
Okay, you're right. Okay, so books that we haven't read but are on our to read list, and just the plots. Did you prepare for this?
No, but I have my Goodreads with me.
I mean, you had the outline, Michelle.
I know.
All right, well, while
I told you I did not prepare.
Tracy's off the hook because she just came to show us her new car. We roped her into this.
Hold on, I got my one to read in front of me.
All right, well, I'll start.
Okay.
One is 420 Characters by Lou Beach. Have y'all heard of this?
No, is it only 420 characters?
Well,
that's ridiculously flash fiction-y.
Well, it is. It started out just like as his Facebook statuses, and I didn't realize that Facebook limits you to 420 characters, but 420, and it's an episode about Were They High. But anyway, so he wrote. It's a compilation of short stories where he has to have this really crystalline story because he has to tell it in 420 characters or less, including the spaces and everything. And it's kind of hard to find, but I did find a copy of it on eBay, and I'm waiting on it to get here. Cannot wait to read it. It's been out for a few years, but obviously, it's not not really a writer. I mean, I don't know. I sound like I'm casting shade on Lou Beach, and I'm super excited to read this book.
I mean, wow.
I also want to read Beetlebone by Kevin Barry.
Okay.
It's 1978, and John Lennon has escaped New York City to try and find the island off the west coast of Ireland he bought 11 years prior. Leaving behind domesticity, his approaching 40s, his inability to create, and his memories of his parents, he sets off to calm his unquiet soul in the comfortable silence of isolation. But when he puts himself in the hands of a shape-shifting driver full of Irish charm and dark whimsy, what ensues can only be termed a magical mystery tour.
Oh.
Doesn't that sound good?
It does sound fun.
I want to go somewhere with a shape-shifting Irish cabbie.
Same. Same.
All right, say John Lennon didn't die. Say he got out of New York City before what's-his-face could kill him.
Yeah.
He left Yoko. He's going to go back. He just needed to get away.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to Ireland. I don't know if John Lennon actually had property in Ireland, but I want to feel like this was a well-researched. Okay, your turn.
All right, so I'm thinking The Book Eaters by Sunny Dean. Right? So this one is out on the Yorkshire moor. There's a secret line of people for whom books are food and who retain all of the book's content after eating it. To them, spy novels are a peppery snack. Romance novels are sweet and delicious. Eating a map can help them remember destinations. And children, when they misbehave, are forced to eat dry, musty pages from dictionaries.
Definitely high.
Right?
We should do an episode about that book because
the same title.
Exactly.
Right, absolutely.
The Master and the Margarita.
Oh. Are you sure it's got the margarita in the title?
I know, that's why I picked it. It's exactly why I picked it.
Okay.
But it's actually The Master and Margarita. Margarita's a person. By Mikhail Bulgakov. One hot spring, the devil arrives in Moscow, accompanied by a retinue that includes a beautiful naked witch, an immense talking black cat with a fondness for chess and vodka. I personally love any book that has a talking cat in it. The best one is The Aeronaut's Windlass.
Oh,
but don't start it because he's only
finished.
written one.
Yeah.
It's the same dude who wrote the series that I don't like, that I think is misogynistic. Harry. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you know.
Dresden.
Yes, that one, that writer. But I don't know why he spent so much time on other stuff. The Aeronaut's Windlass was perfect fantasy. I won't go. I mean, it's up there with.
I mean, Jim Butcher made a lot of money off Harry Dresden.
Mm-hmm. So he has his money. Okay,
I mean, a lot of people love Harry Dresden. So how many books of those did you read? Just the first one?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the problem. They don't really get good till like the fourth
You
one.
keep saying this to me. You say it about Supernatural. You say it about Harry Dresden. You say it about the Mages and the Margarita.
What I'm saying is you have to commit to something and go ahead and listen to it all the way through before you can actually get the meat of it.
Why?
Because I'm telling you it's good. I mean, the Mages and the Margarita is more of the same, but Harry Dresden gets better. I'm just saying it gets better, but you
That's
probably
like if I was like, hey, look, I made this delicious pot pie, and then you take the first bite and it makes you want to vomit, and I'm like, no, trust me, by the time you get to the middle, it's really good.
All right, I think you're taking the book eater analogy a little too far.
Okay, last one that I had was the Illumination by Kevin Brockmeyer. At 8:17 on a Friday night, the illumination begins. Every wound begins to shine, every bruise to glow and shimmer. And in the aftermath of a fatal car accident, a journal of love notes written by a husband to his wife passes into the keeping of Carol Ann Page, and from there through the hands of 5 other people: a photojournalist, a schoolchild, a missionary, a writer, and a street vendor. But basically the illumination is, for some reason at this specific time, every injury or wound upon your body emits light.
Oh.
Let's just all think about that for a minute, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Had to be high.
I mean, sure.
You weren't prepared, but is there any books that you've heard about that you're like, man, I should check that out one day?
So I do have a book in my to-be-read that has a really cool concept that I'm looking forward to.
Okay.
In that, and it's not original, I know there's other stories with it, but it's that they would tattoo their magic on them, so they would be able to use that tattoo. Like if you tattooed a knife on your arm, you would be able to take that and use it as a knife.
I feel like I read something like that.
Yes, like I said, it's not just to this book, but it's a book talking about it, where like you can tattoo a spell on yourself, and you can activate the spell by hitting your tattoo and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's a really interesting concept that I'm looking forward to.
Was it like superhero?
This one wasn't. This was set in. It was a typical fantasy book set in.
I feel like we read one of those in Scary. Remember, they had the one child it was written by a woman, superhero-y sort of a thing, and they had the one child that was like in this glass room that the protagonist would go and visit all the time.
Oh yeah.
And then the dude kept like drawing shit on his arm.
Yeah, that's true. Do you read this one? I think I read the two of them. Is that
V.E. Schwab?
Oh,
V. Schwab.
Yeah.
No, it isn't V. Schwab. It's what is it? There was like there may have been 3. I finished them. It's like
Are you sure it's not V. Schwab?
I'm not sure. It's
Vengeful.
Like, because Vengeful isn't Vengeful the one where
Vicious?
Where they're like those are the serial killer ones where they're like they have superpowers but they're kind of evil.
Like this
one is
and they were friends.
This one, like the girl, like you're not sure if she's a spy or if she's a good guy, she's a bad guy, and then you're like, oh.
But she has a fondness for the boy.
She has a fondness for the boy, but you kind of find out early on that she's related to the big bad, and
she doesn't really fit into their school
and she's trying to like infiltrate them, and then the little boy, and then she has a relationship with the little boy who's in the glass. God, what is the name of that one? I'm going to tell you what mine is, and then I'm going to look up where it's caramel pecan roll murder.
What?
Caramel pecan roll murder. Embracing a sweet escape from her usual routine at the cookie jar, Hannah gets asked for help in baking pastries at a local inn for a flashy fishing competition with big prizes and even bigger names. But the fun stops when she spots a runaway boat on the water, and on board the lifeless body of the event's renowned celebrity spokesperson. Famed TV host Sonny Bowman wasn't humble about his ability to reel in winning catches. And no one knew the better than this tragically overwatched sidekick. Joey did finally take bloody revenge on his pompous boss, or was Sonny killed by a jealous contestant? I like it.
There's not enough books that feature game shows, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm. Cooking shows, for sure.
What do you think is the best game show of all time? Like, if you were going to be able to go be a contestant, what would it be?
On a game show?
Yeah.
Oh, shit, I'm bad at stuff.
I mean, I love Family Feud. The old Family Feud, even though Richard Dawson was a kind of a creepy old man.
Like, if we could pick our family and us go?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I also really used to love the pyramid game. What was that one called?
The
$10,000 pyramid. Loved that. Loved that. Price is Right, Obby. And
but
I just want to say this.
Jeopardy. You have all kinds of nonsense.
Oh, no. I'm always really bad at Jeopardy. I did used to like win, lose, or draw quite a bit. But I just want to go on record. My nanny, told me that when I grew up, she would take me to be a contestant on The Price is Right. And she never did.
Oh, the horror.
Right? Now, Nate's grandmother went on The Price is Right and won the Showcase Showdown, the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. I wish I could, because she was a sweet lady. What do you think your approach would be when it came to spinning the bid wheel?
Just do it. Close my eyes and hope for the best.
I would I'd just put all of my energy in it and spin it as hard as I could.
Yep.
Yeah. The trick is getting out of the bidding, what do they call that? The little corral where you're all down there staring up at Bob Barker.
Bidder's Row or whatever.
Yeah. That's the trick.
I never watched those shows.
You didn't have a favorite game on Price is Right?
No, I never watched any of those shows. Like, the closest I come to is, like, watching the Saturday Night Live when they make fun of it.
What was your favorite?
Plinko.
I love Plinko, too.
I've never heard of that.
But I also love the crazy one where they have to run and switch and then pull the lever to see if they're right. I'm like, damn it. But my absolute favorite was the cliffhanger where the little mountain guy's
Oh
going
my God,
up,
yes,
yodeling.
yes.
You know, there's yodeling in the background, and I love that one. Okay, all right. So bookend. I'm going to ask you these questions, and then so have the numbers in your head, and then I will give you the plot of the speculative fiction book that you will write in the future. Okay. Number 1, how many pets have you had in your life? And if you don't go over 20, and if you can't, just kind of come up with a number, basically. Okay. I mean, that's just the first number. Can I go on to the...
No.
Okay, we'll just
know I'm over 20, so I'm going to...
You're just going to say 20?
I was just going to pick like a number.
Okay, pick a random number. That's good. Okay, we'll just...
All right, I have one.
Number 2, how many words is in the title of your favorite book?
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
And then the third number is the age when you first learned about death.
Oh, God. When I first learned about death?
Sorry.
Like first experienced death, or like just learned the thing that happened?
Yeah, like when it came into your...
I don't know.
Okay, well then pick a random number. Jesus. It's really hard to write a game. Let me just say.
I got my numbers.
Everybody has their numbers?
Yeah.
All right, go Tracy.
16, 3, and 4.
Okay. In your book, bartenders must never laugh. 4. Bartenders must never laugh to overthrow the patriarchy. So in your world,
my world,
bartenders have the capacity to overthrow the patriarchy, but only if they never emit the sound of laughter. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good book to me.
I mean, that's an interesting caveat.
Okay, Michelle.
Okay, it was 17, 3, and 7.
Oh, we already had a 3.
Well, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, in your world, a busker, you know, those people on the sidewalk playing music for change, must never laugh. For what number?
7.
I'm sorry. One more time. What was your name? You know, because of the John, you're trying to get John's name.
Michelle.
Your last number was what?
7.
Improve their self-esteem.
All right.
Okay. And then for me, it is a dog walker goes to 4-H competitions in a fog of existential crisis.
That's nice.
Man, I wish we had more people to play because we didn't even get to.
Let's do random numbers.
Okay, do random numbers. Pick 3 random numbers. 1 through 20.
7.
Court stenographers.
12.
Born with tiny wings.
19.
Erase their memories every 24 hours.
Oh, God. Court stenographers. That would actually be good for them.
They probably carry a lot of them.
With tiny wings, though. I don't know.
Okay, your turn, Michelle.
2.
Talking cats. And I didn't even know that was going to come up tonight.
9.
Manages a nightclub that slowly
15.
survives a zombie apocalypse. Slowly.
Big talking cats.
Let's keep going. This is fun. 3 more.
Okay. 4.
Time travelers.
2.
Pick pockets.
And 12.
To find a happy ending.
Aww.
I mean,
what kind of happy ending are in those pockets?
All right, 2 more and then we're done.
And who's happy ending?
Okay. 9.
Lunch ladies.
Lunch lady lounge. 20.
Use cloud formations.
1.
To pay off college debt.
That's actually, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is actually pretty good. I should publish this.
You should.
Yeah.
100%. You should put it up on our Facebook site.
Okay, your turn, Tracy.
One more?
1 more.
20. 20. 20.
A pianist.
I did 20 already.
Not for the first part. Pianist. A pianist.
1.
Hammers windows shut.
A pianist hammers windows shut.
5.
to take over Earth. That was kind of a letdown.
I mean, why would the word
6.
of being shut take over the Earth?
Say 11.
11.
To plan the perfect road trip. All right. We're going to play this probably all night, so we will let our listeners off the hook. But I think that's a good idea, Michelle. We can put this up on our Facebook page, or probably just the Facebook page, because I don't think you do that sort of thing on Instagram or Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So, and...
Well, I mean, we could take a picture out of it and put it on.
Yeah, but we want people to comment and, like, tell us what the name of their...
They can comment on all the social media.
I'm not on the other social media, but I definitely know I've seen stuff like this on Facebook.
Sure.
It was super fun to make.
That's cool.
And I actually think there was a couple of ideas for actual books in this.
For sure.
All right, so we're going to go play this game amongst ourselves and think about what we've done.
About speculative fiction.
We'll speculate about what you kids are going to be up to while we are getting ready for the next chapter. And in the meantime, eat the books, motherfucker.